Hello and welcome to my Flosstube. This is Cardamom Pins, the channel, and my name is Carmen, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this video. It's been a minute, so welcome to everyone old and new, and I'm just gonna jump right into things and I'll share a little bit about what's been going on as it becomes relevant as we go. So I have a lot of cross-stitching to share with you. I also have quite a bit of knitting that will be interspersed here and there. And we're gonna get right into it. So the last time I made a Flosstube was in December. So we're gonna go back in time to December, to Advent time, because there was an Advent that I was working on, which I have finished, and this is my first opportunity to share it. So I know we're kind of not really in the Christmas season anymore, but just, use your imagination. So here it is. This is the 2024 holiday countdown designed by Jacob of Modern Folk Embroidery, and this is a collaboration between him, Evertote, the LNS in London, Ontario, and Roxy Floss, which is the dyer of all beautiful linens and flosses. So I didn't get the full kit with the daily flosses and the exclusive linen. I made my own conversion, but I did do it to Roxy Floss. So it's all in the family. The linen is called Snickerdoodle. I stitched it on 40 count. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this is a linen that exists anymore. I haven't seen it on their website in a while, but yeah, I had bought it a while ago. And the three flosses are tart. The red is the tart, green is sage, and this very tonal off-white color is called antique lace. So yeah, I finished this. Okay, I have a confession to make. I actually finished this on December 22nd. I know, it's supposed to be an Advent, but I was traveling back home for the holidays on the 23rd, and I didn't want to bring it with me, so I stitched ahead, and I just didn't share on social media until everybody else had finished it. So I didn't spoil any surprises for anyone other than me, but yeah, I did do that. And actually there's a little bit of a story to the finishing of this project, which I've debated whether or not I want to share, but I feel like it gives a lot of context to pretty much all of the crafting that I have done since then, and I've done so much because I've needed things to kind of console my heart, my sad little heart. Basically, last year was a bit of a difficult year. There were a few deaths in my family, unfortunately. I did mention on a Flosstube about a year ago that my grandmother had passed away, and I was quite close with her, and I grew up next door to her, and my family on the Italian side of the family is a very close family, as with a lot of families in general, but especially in Italian culture we tend to be kind of close. And unfortunately, a few weeks after my nonna passed away, my aunt, who had been basically my grandmother's like BFF, they were always together and they lived together, and my aunt was like a full-time caretaker to my grandmother. Unfortunately, a few weeks after my grandmother passed away, my aunt had to have an emergency, very serious surgery, and she basically just was never really able to recover. And so about 9 months later, at the end of December, she did pass away. And I mentioned that because when I received the news that she passed away, I was actually putting my final stitches into this. And I don't know if it's ironic or coincidence or what, but when I received the news that my nonna had passed away, I was also stitching on a project and putting the final stitches into it. And what I had decided to do last year with my nonna is posthumously stitch her initials over one into that piece. So I ended up doing the same thing here. So if you look very closely above the little reindeer, there is some over one stitching in the antique lace. You can barely see it. I put my aunt's initials here, and because they were so close and they died so close together, I ended up putting my grandma's on the other side as well. So yeah, a little bit of a sad way to end the year, Also a sad way to enter the new year, but yeah, anyway. But yeah, that's the first finish I have to share with you. And it does a little bit explain why I didn't make a floss tube. I don't know, it was kind of hard to know how to talk about all the crafting that I decided to do after the fact, because I feel like those events kind of informed everything somehow. Anyways, I did bring out my previous 2 countdowns just for fun, so we can have them all on display. This was 2023 and 2022. I did do both of these last year because I wasn't really stitching yet. So I did this one after the fact, but yes. I have stitched them all from the same fat quarter of linen, and I probably have enough left of that fat quarter to do this year's holiday countdown, the 2025 one, but after that I can't get that linen anymore. So in 2026 I will have to come up with a different linen and floss combo. However, it is kind of nice that they all match, so I don't know if I'll try to find a dupe or if I'll just totally switch things up and decide to do something else altogether. Anyways, the next thing on my list to talk about, and I have a long list of things to talk about, is actually the sweater that I'm wearing right now. So this is the twist loop sweater designed by Other Loops, and I realized a while ago that I prefer when I'm crafting on the go, when I'm traveling or whatever, I find knitting a lot easier to transport around with me. So I decided that my big project that I would do at home would be a sweater instead of a sampler or something like that. So I had already started this before I left, and I finished it over the holidays. And as I mentioned, I was kind of, you know, maybe a little bit down because my aunt had passed away. So I felt like I wanted to finish it in 2024. So I actually finished it on New Year's Eve with all of the ends woven in 9 minutes before midnight. So yes, this is a 2024 project. And the last thing that I finished last year, I did block it on New Year's Day though, so I don't know. Anyways, so here it is. I wanted something that would be easy for everyday wear. This is, I mean, it's a very professional looking design. My favorite part of it is this part of the sleeve, like all the decreases happen here. And it's just like very oversized. I knit size 2. If you want to knit this, just be careful because it is very big. I noticed in a lot of the project notes, people were talking about how massive it was. So I actually ended up changing my mind and knitting a size 2 instead of a size 3, which technically was supposed to be my size, but yeah. And the armholes are nice and big, which I like. And the yarn I used is Drops Puna in the color 2, beige 2. So it's, you know, a neutral everyday. And actually of all of the sweaters I've made, I take this as a compliment, but I've had, I think, nobody come up to me and ask me if I made this. People in my life know I knit. So when I wear one of my hand knits, usually they'll ask me about it, but this one nobody's asked me about. And I think it's because it doesn't really look handmade. I think it looks like super professional and like something you would buy at a store, but actually nicer because there's no seams. So yeah, it's a raglan, top down. I don't really know too much what to say about it, other than I really like it. Unfortunately, the yarn does pill quite a bit. However, it's been pilling less. And I think maybe there was like an initial shedding that needed to happen, and now it has happened. And so yeah, so that's the first sweater. All right, so in my last video from a million years ago, it was a kit parade, and I had talked about what I should choose as my blessing sampler, which is a project you start on the 1st of January, and the idea is that you stitch it and you aim to finish it within the month of January. So I had decided that I wanted to stitch Lammegien Pot, and I have stitched Lammegien Pot, but in the end I didn't actually do this as my blessing sampler because, once again, my aunt, I assumed I would be back home, I would be back here by January 1st, but because there was a funeral and everything, I all of my supplies were here. However, I did bring one cross-stitch project with me over the holidays, so I just switched gears and I made that my blessing sampler, even though it's actually not a sampler, it's a small. And whoop, here it is. Clearly it hasn't been assembled yet. Here, I'll show you the book. So GH 1857, if you've watched my channel, you'll know that I love this sampler so much. I have stitched it, and I've now stitched all of the smalls. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go grab those items. 1 second. So this sampler is probably the most significant stitching project that I did in 2024. This is the sampler from GH 1857 by Idée. I used all of the called for flosses except the linen. I used Duxbury by Fox and Rabbit, and I had just enough leftover linen from this fat quarter to stitch all but one of the smalls. And I've talked about this in other Flosstubes, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But yeah, I wasn't able to stitch all of the smalls, so I had to choose a different linen to stitch the mattress that you see in the corner here. And so I did that. January 1st, I stitched that. You'll see that the orientation here is different for, I started this on a Q-snap and then I ended up finishing it in frame, so the orientation made more sense in different frames, so that's why I changed. But it doesn't really matter because it's all gonna get cut up and sewn together at some point. So yeah. Oh, funny story about this. I brought all of this with me, all kitted up, but I forgot to bring needles. So I didn't have any needles. And so I asked my mom if she had needles, and she had, like, I don't know, size 22 needles, because I did teach my mom how to cross stitch. Very proud daughter here. Anyways, but she prefers larger counts, or I guess larger stitches, so lower counts. Anyways, so she only had big needles. And the very first thing I stitched in 2025 was over 1 on 40 count with the world's most massive needles. And it was not very fun, but it got a lot more fun after that. Yeah, so that is finished. And the linen that I chose was from a 6-pack of 1/8 yard cuts from Nicholas Flamel Designs, and the pack was called the Little Sampler Set. So this particular color I don't think it has a specific name, but yeah, I chose it for that. And I feel like, you know, it's different to the original, but the colors still looked really nice on it. So, and also I feel bad using a brand new fat quarter to stitch a small. So somehow it seemed more justifiable in my mind to eat into an 1/8 yard instead of a 1/4 yard, if that makes sense to anybody. And I will have a very awkward amount of scrap at the bottom. I don't know, we'll figure that out at some point. So I would put that there. So that was my first cross stitch finish of the year, GH 1857. Now all I have to do is actually finish these projects, which I don't really know how to do. Well, in theory I do, because there's really very thorough instructions in this book, but I'm kind of putting it off. I bought all of the materials that I think I need to do the finishing, but I'm like really scared. I think the mattress, this is a good picture of the mattress. Oop. The mattress should probably be not that difficult, because, I mean, I've made pin cushions before, and this little scissor fob should probably also not be that hard. What I'm mostly worried about are these two, the drum and the needle book. However, the needle book is kind of amazing. And so is the drum. I've never actually seen a drum in real life. No, that's not true. I saw them at some LNSs. But I don't have a drum. I want a drum. Okay, so anyways, I would like to now take a moment to continue talking about Idée. So Idée, if you don't know, is the woman behind it, her name is Simone, and I had the absolute pleasure of meeting her last year because I went to the Netherlands, and she has an LNS, she has an online shop called Idée, and over the years she has hosted a lot of stitch-alongs, and she has started to do some designing and reproduction designs. And so I think of her as a designer first and foremost, but when I met her, she says she thinks of herself more as a shop owner that also designs. So I thought that was kind of funny. Anyways, so last year, probably close to a year ago, she, on her Instagram and through her website, she had posted like, I don't know, 8 or 9 different red samplers, and she said, I'm gonna come out with a book of red samplers, but I can only put, 6 or 7 designs in it, 6 designs in it, and I can't choose which ones to put on it, so please vote. And so, of course, I was very excited, and I voted, and there was one of these designs that I really hoped would make it, but I had a feeling that people wouldn't be into it because it was a darning sampler. And I haven't really seen people stitch darning samplers all that often. I see them, I've seen antiques of them, but I'm not aware of a whole lot of patterns for darning samplers, and I haven't seen people do it that often. So I thought that probably people would not be that excited about it, and that I might be the only person to vote for the darning sampler, but I voted for it, and then I learned that actually it did get chosen to be put in the book. And she said on Instagram the other day that it's actually the most popular design so far to be stitched from this book. So clearly I was very, very wrong. And anyways, not too long ago, I got the book in the mail. So it's called Connected by the Red Thread. And I'm just gonna flip it to the other side so you can see a picture of all 6 of the samplers that are reproduced in here. So this is the one that I was talking about. And I definitely want to stitch it, but honestly, I want to stitch them all. So, not only, okay, this book is incredible. If you like red samplers and if you like hem stitches, then you need to get this because, okay, not only are there charts in here, but there's also like, this is a big book, right? Like this is more than just charts. There are instructions on how to do all sorts of different hem stitches. Let's see if I can find, like, okay. I don't want to like show you too much because you kind of need to like get the book, but also you can see a lot of this on her Instagram. But like this page here, you can see some of the samplers all stacked on top of each other, and there are different ways that they are finished. And this book gives you detailed instructions on how to do all of that kind of finishing. And well, I won't show you because again, you need to get the book, but it includes like QR codes that when you scan them, it'll bring you to video tutorials. So, okay, like this one here, I think she calls this one like mouse teeth or something like that. But it's, if you look at it, it has like a very delicate hem on the very edge, and I kind of stitched that once. I used some scrap linen and I figured out a way to sort of do it, but I don't know if I really did it right, and I don't know if it was secure. I just used scrap linen, so I didn't really care if it worked out. But yeah, I really want to learn how to do that. Okay, here's another one that I have also kind of reverse engineered. So look at that. It has like 2 rows of little eyelets, right? Now, if I can bring out, was it this? Yes. I kind of maybe figured out how to do that sort of hem stitch on this. Hold on, I need to hold these out properly. So this was my holiday countdown from 2023, and I've sort of done that, but again, I don't really know if I did it right. I just sort of guessed. It looks similar, so I really want to check that out and see if I actually figured it out on my own, or if there are maybe better methods. Let me find another one. Okay, another thing about this one, and this is a really small detail, but if you look at the outside edge of the linen, like here, that outside edge, there's like It's almost like a picot edge. Do you see that? It's a small, small detail, but I love how that looks. And I want to know how to do it. So hopefully that is explained in here as well. Oh, okay, yeah, here's the darning sampler with the reproduction. You got to get this book. Okay, cross stitch books are great when they're full of patterns, but this is more than just a cross stitch book. I'm so impressed. The amount of work that must have gone into this. Also, the photography is so good. And for any Dutch people out there, it's bilingual. Everything is in Dutch and in English. So, yo, you need to get this. Everybody needs to drop what they're doing right now. Okay, I don't want to encourage anyone to make bad financial decisions. But like, if it's within your means and this is like your thing, it's not optional. Like I'm so excited about this. I had also in my order included alle randjes verzameld, and actually I saw this when I was at her shop last year, and I didn't buy it because my mom bought it. And so in my mind I was like, oh, my mom has it. It's like, but then my mom has it, I want it. I don't care if my mom has it. Anyway, so I bought this as well. And just to change the subjects a little bit, for years and years, Simona has hosted, all sorts of different stitch-alongs, but she would have a randje per week. So she would release one border design per week. And she did that, from 2014 to 2021. And there's like a huge collection of borders in here. There's cute ones with like little men riding bicycles and elephants, and I can't really show you, but but they're in here and they're great. And if you ever want to customize any of your pieces, well, this is an incredible catalog of different borders to choose from. Anyway, so I included that in my order because I didn't want this book to be lonely. So he had a companion. He was in good hands, and I'm so excited about this book. I'm so impressed. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna move on now. But yes, all right. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is sort of the big announcement that I would like to make in this video. So the first knitting project that I started in 2025 was a pair of socks that comes from this book, 52 Weeks of Socks by Len Publishing. And it was the first pair of socks in the second chapter of this book. So there are 52 sock patterns in here, and the book is divided into 4 seasons, 4 chapters, 4 groupings of 3 months. And I talked about this a few times on my channel, but a year ago when I started knitting, decided that I would take on a huge challenge, which was to knit all 52 pairs of socks from this book. And I'm happy to say that I have finished the first quarter of that challenge. So last week I spent many hours combing through about 8 hours of footage that I took over the last year, covering the making of the first quarter of this book. And those videos are all edited and ready to go, and I plan on sharing those to YouTube next week. It's 4 different videos covering the first 13 patterns from this book, and I plan on releasing those on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And actually it is partly the reason, on top of my aunt passing away, why I didn't make a video for a while, because there literally was no storage space left on my phone, which is what I use to film everything. So last week I had a week off, and I was like, oh, that's cool, I'll do a little bit of editing here and there every day. I ended up spending 3 full 8-hour work days essentially editing around 8 or 9 hours of footage, paring it down to 5 hours, which is still a lot, and then splitting that into 4 different videos. So anyways, I mention it now because I did knit from this book on January 3rd, which was actually the 1-year anniversary of me knitting. I learned to knit exactly 1 year prior, and the socks that I cast on that day were the Lume socks by Heidi Allender, which is the 14th pattern from this book. But I'll talk about this a little bit later when I talk about socks. But for now, I'm gonna move on. I just felt like I should let people know that next week you're gonna get an onslaught of videos from me, and they're all gonna be about sock knitting. So if you're not into knitting, you don't need to unsubscribe from the channel. There will be more stitching videos. You can just skip those ones. But if you are into knitting, this is like sock knitting with a capital S and a capital K, if you know what I mean. There's some, actually I brought them out here. These are the socks that I made. Well, minus one pair, because one of the pairs I'm actually wearing. But this is 12 of the 13 pairs that I made, and I will talk about these extensively in the videos that I post next week. So it is kind of fun to hold them up like this. Okay, where do I put these now? I'll put them here. So that's my little teaser for next week's videos. So look out for that if you enjoy sock knitting or if you're just curious. So now back to my would-be blessing sampler, Lammegien Pot. So this is a really special sampler to me. I talked about it in my kit parade, but if I may repeat myself, this is a pattern that I saw for the very first time. Well, I saw a picture of the antique when I went to Jacob Palooza in the fall of 2023, which was a retreat that I attended in London, Ontario, hosted by Evertote, and Jacob of Modern Folk Embroidery was the guest, and he gave a couple of presentations, and at one point he showed the antique of this, and I was very taken aback because it is a sampler from Drenthe, which is the province in the Netherlands that my family is from. Well, my mom's side of the family. On my dad's side of the family, we're Italian, but on my mom's side, we're Dutch, and we're from Drenthe. And I have, over the years, come across many, many samplers from neighboring provinces like Groningen and Friesland, as well as other parts of the Netherlands. But I always wondered why I couldn't find any samplers from Drenthe. And so at the retreat, I asked Jacob, I mean, first of all, I was like, whoa, are you gonna reproduce this one? Because it's from the region my family is from, but also why is this the only sampler from that region that I have ever encountered? And he basically told me in short that Drenthe used to be a rather poor province. I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore, but it was at the time, and that little girls didn't necessarily have time to make non-essential items like this. And also, you know, they probably needed their linens and whatnot to make, you know, curtains and bedding and clothing and stuff like that. Actually, that's part of the reason why I'm so into darning samplers, just to skip back to Idée. It's because I feel like that's like the original purpose of a sampler, was to learn how to make do with the little material that you had, how to fix material that maybe had a flaw in it but was still usable. Anyways, back to Lammegien Pot. So I was really moved by that, and he explained to me that this was exclusive to a shop in the Netherlands called the Handwerk Boutique. Last year I had the pleasure of actually visiting that LNS, and so I was able to buy this. However, I am happy to report that it has now been released for general consumption. So you can get paper charts at Evertote and maybe some other places too, I'm not sure. But you can also get the PDF on Jacob's website. And as always, I will include links to everything that I mention in the description of this video. So without further ado, here is my finish of Lammegien Pot. So I started this, I think, it was like maybe January 5th or 6th whenever I got home from the funeral. So it ended up not really being a blessing sampler, and I didn't even finish it in the month of January either because I ran into some issues with the pink. So I made a conversion out of all Roxy floss, linen, and flosses, and I originally had chosen Piggy Bank as my pink. I thought that looked really nice in the color palette, and you know, in the skein, I feel like it shows up. But in actuality, and maybe I have a picture or two that I can pop on screen because I had posted pictures to my Instagram stories asking people for their advice. It was very pale. It was in the color family that I was hoping for, but it was very pale and it wasn't very visible. And I had some weird feelings about it. So I emailed Hannah at Evertote, Floss Boss Hannah, and I asked her, like, hey, do you guys have piggy bank, but like just darker? And she said, well, actually next month we're releasing a floss that is actually the darker version of piggy bank and also a lighter version of it. And I forget the name of that floss, but there is also a lighter version of piggy bank called Prima Donna. And I do feel like mentioning that when I asked for advice on Instagram, the lovely Ellen, Maximum Cross Stitch Ellen, suggested smoked salmon. So this is smoked salmon, and they are admittedly very similar. Actually, you can barely tell a difference. But smoked salmon is like a little bit dirtier and grungier, and I still wanted that brightness and the clarity from piggy bank. So Prima Donna was the ultimate winner, and that is what I put into my sampler. And I shared it online, and then Jacob decided to release it, and he really liked my conversion. And so if you go onto the Evertote website, this is what they're selling, which is like such an honor. So anybody can stitch this now, exactly this combination of colors and linen. I forget all of the colors of floss that I chose, but this is 40 Count Biscuit by Roxy Floss. And of course, the pink is Prima Donna. So I ended up finishing this in February, so no, it doesn't count as a blessing sampler, but it did get stitched. And I decided, I had a bunch of different choices for a blessing sampler, but I decided to go with this, largely inspired by a comment that I got on that video. And somebody had written me about, how, your life can change at any moment. And I had expressed a desire to stitch this for some family members as well. I think I'm probably going to stitch this a few times. It's not very big. It's very easy to, it's not a huge project. So it wouldn't be a burden to stitch this again. It was really fun to do. Anyways, and she was kind of explaining that you should just do the things that matter, because you never know when your life can take a turn or end, God forbid. Yeah, so I don't know, I was kind of moved by that, and with my aunt passing away and everything, even though she belonged to the other side of my family, not the Dutch side, it's kind of all the same. This makes me feel very connected with my heritage, and I would like to make a few of these for Dutch members of my family. And hey, if an Italian person in my other side of my family wants one too, I'll make one for you too. But maybe there's a fun Italian sampler I could make for them instead. Many ideas. Okay, I'm running out of space here. She's gonna hang out here. Whew. And I think Laura Duet is stitching it now, so that's exciting. Okay, so the next two projects that I'm going to show you are actually stitched on the same piece of linen, so I kind of have to show it to you at the same time. So this was also featured in my kit parade. These are two small-ish samplers. Here, I'll show you this one first. This is the Candlestick Maker by Brenda Gervais, and this is the Beekeeper sampler, also by Brenda Gervais. And the story behind this is that I had seen this one featured on a video by Brenda and Laura, and I thought this guy's big bum was hilarious. So I tracked down the pattern, and then I found out that it had a companion piece, so of course I had to get that too. And these patterns are out of print. However, I did some Googling not too long ago, and there are a number of shops that still have them in stock. So if you like these, don't wait, get them now, because they are still being sold a few places at the like original price. So not secondary market price. You're paying, you know, the whatever, 15 bucks or I can't remember how much I paid for them, but something like that. This is Beekeeper sampler and the candlestick maker. And actually I was thinking about it because beekeeping and candlestick making, I can't imagine are, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you can make a ton of money doing those kinds of things. But I feel like to have two homes, because it's clearly the same couple in both of these, right? So they have like a summer home and a winter home. Like they must be making so much honey and wax. And also I was thinking, oh, so they're beekeepers. So maybe like in the summer they make honey and then all the wax, all of the wax that they accumulate from their summer bees, then they take that wax and in the wintertime they make candles. That's the storyline that I have given them. They have a summer job and a winter job, and they have a summer home and a winter home. How they afford both those homes in this economy, I don't know. But maybe they inherited them. I don't know. Anyways, I did make a small change to the candlestick maker. I used all of the called for floss except for the main color in the house. So I'm gonna show you the called for flosses as well as the cover here. And I would like to preface this by saying that this pattern was released in 2013. So dye lots and stuff. Anyways, the two colors in the house, I would describe that as a brown and as a reddish brown for the main color of the house. These are the colors that it calls for, which to me are very orange. One of these is Pecan by Weeks Dye Works, and the other is Apple Cider by The Gentle Art. And I had stitched the roof of the house, and then I kind of looked at my flosses and at the cover photo, and I was like, do I really want an orange house? So I really didn't feel like picking out the roof. It was a lot of stitching. So I ended up going through my stash and I picked out Redwood by Roxy Floss and using that as the main color in the house. I'm sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of showing all of this. I just thought that that looked a lot more similar to the original. The roof is still a pretty different color, but I don't mind too much. So I don't really know. I mean, the colors are so different that it almost seems like maybe it was a mistake, but also this was more than 10 years ago, so who knows how many dye lot recipes have maybe been tweaked and stuff since then. I have no idea. But if you want a color that looks a little bit more like the main color of the house, maybe something like this will work a little bit more than, I think it was Pecan. Was it Pecan? I can't remember. Can't remember which was which, but it was one of these orange guys was what it was called for. So yeah, it was Pecan. The house would have been this color, which I didn't really want. So that's the one change that I made. And yeah, just one last time. Oh, the other change, sorry, I forgot to mention this. The linen is 46 count cappuccino by Fiber on a Whim that I had. This is actually one of the very first pieces of linen that I ever bought, back when I didn't really know what I was buying. In hindsight, I probably would have gotten 40 count, but the nice thing about stitching with cotton thread on 46 count is that you get really, really good coverage. So, candlestick maker and the beekeeper sampler. And boy, oh boy, was there a lot of stitching in that house. Woo! Took forever. But look, in the bees, you can see there's little bees above the bee skeps. Isn't that cute? And there's a little doggy. There's a doggy in both of them. So I guess their dog follows them to their winter and summer homes. Yeah, I really, really love these. And this is actually my first time stitching any Brenda Gervais. She is, I want to say she's one of my favorite designers, but seeing as how I haven't actually stitched very much of hers, I'm a bit of a phony saying that. But yeah, I love her sense of space, and she has such a language with how she designs. Anyways, so yeah, if you like these patterns, and you're having a hard time finding them, reach out to me. I can maybe find something. But I had, just by like Googling, I found an Etsy shop that had both of them. I found a shop in Australia that had them in stock, so you can still find them, but maybe not for long. So get them while you can. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to sweaters. Wait, hold on, I need to change. Whoa, wardrobe change. I'm wearing another sweater because this is the next sweater that I made. So this is, and actually the really fun thing about this is the bottom. So I'm gonna stand up, you won't see my head, sorry, but check this out, isn't that cute? So this is called the Tulip sweater, and it was designed by Melody Hoffman. And and I like wearing it with these green pants because it makes me feel like a flower, and it's very springtimey, and I really, really love it. Anyway, so the yarn I chose came from Sonder Yarn Co., which is based in Montreal, and I live in Quebec, so that was very relevant to me. And I held a DK with a mohair. So the DK that I used, that color was called Cut Flowers, and the mohair was called Sentimental. And actually this is my first time knitting with mohair in a garment, and I was a little bit worried that maybe it would be itchy, but it's fine so far. So I'm happy to know that I can tolerate mohair. So I don't really know what to say about it other than it's awesome. The one sort of, I guess, problem that I had, and this is something that I noticed from a lot of the people who had the people who had knit it online, is that the arms are kind of tight. So I actually knit the arms 3 times because I ripped out my first arm because it was, I mean, I could wear it, it was just like skin tight. So I ended up, can't remember exactly what I did, but I wrote it down in my notes app. So if anyone really wants to know, I can tell you. But basically I picked up an additional 2 stitches under the arm, and I didn't do any decreases. It had you decreasing gradually from the beginning, but I didn't do any decreases until I hit about the elbow, and then I did decreases, and then I ended up with, I think, 4 more stitches than I was supposed to have for my size. I don't remember what size I made, probably size 3. I think I've made size 3 in every garment that I've made since I started knitting. Anyways, it's so cute. I love this. I feel like a flower. I did make one massive mistake though. So, okay, the pattern has you use, I think it was a sport weight yarn, and you hold it double. And I really wanted to try Sonder Yarn Co. yarns, and I also didn't want to, I don't know, I didn't have any sport weight yarn. Anyways, I decided to use a different yarn. But because it calls for a sport weight yarn held double, the yardage that you need in sport weight held double is twice as much as what you would need. So for like a DK held with a mohair. So if you can see where this is going, I kind of didn't clue into that right away. And so I bought literally twice as much yarn as I needed. And I realized pretty quickly, like, man, I'm gonna have so much leftover. So I did have a ton of leftover in the yarn, and unfortunately I couldn't return it. So I was like, man, do I just make this sweater a second time? So what I ended up doing, and I'm gonna do another wardrobe change, I'll be right back. So I ended up using the leftovers from both of these sweaters, because I also had a ton of leftover from the twist loop sweater, and making this one. So I felt very, you know, economical because I used mostly leftover yarn. I did have to buy a mohair to hold with the Drops Puna to, you know, have a similar gauge. But yeah, this is the Bergman sweater by Caitlin Hunter. And so I used all of the same yarns that I mentioned earlier, but I did buy in their mohair and Sonder Yarn Co. mohair, their color Grand Ballet, to hold with the DK. So I did have to buy a little bit of yarn. But anyways, so now I have like a matching set of 3 sweaters. Luckily, these 2 colors kind of look nice together. So, ooh, my hair's in the way. Yeah. And I did a big color work project, and I'm so proud of myself. So yeah, it has a little bit of color work on the cuff and a little bit of color work on the bottom, and I don't really know what else to say about it other than it's great. And I don't think I made any adjustments with this one. Maybe the length I adjusted, I don't remember. Anyways, so I have almost none of the drops Puna left. I have like maybe 40 grams left, so I feel really good about that. However, I still have more than a whole skein of the DK weight in this pink yarn. And it's like, yeah, I could make another colorwork sweater, but like I'm kind of getting sick of knitting with this color. So I'll hold on to it and we'll see what I end up doing with it. But yeah, so those are the 3 sweaters I made since I last saw you. And then when I finished this sweater, I was like, okay, the only reason I made this sweater is because I had the yardage in those colors. And I really was like very frustrated with myself for having bought twice as much yarn as I needed. So it was the purpose of this sweater was to make me feel better about having bought too much yarn. So I felt better, and then I was like, okay, I need to stop knitting sweaters. This is enough. I made the jean sweater by Colibri Designs. I showed that in a few videos ago. And I remember when I made that, I was like, oh, this is great. So maybe I'll make like 1 sweater a year. And then after 5 years, I'll have 5 sweaters, and that's great. Anyways, I made 4 sweaters in a few months. And now I'm tapping out of knitting sweaters. So that's the sweater break. And now we're going back to stitching. So I have 2 whips to show you. The first one I have shown before. Let me just get it. This is AKGIT, what's the year? 1833, I believe, by Modern Folk Embroidery. I'm going to take it out of its frame so I can show you everything. So here is everything that I have stitched so far. Ooh, okay, so since last time I showed this, I'm literally holding this with my neck. So if my voice sounds weird, that's why. I have stitched this diamond and then those 3 trees on the bottom since the last time that I showed this. And underneath of this, so I have the second half of these trees to stitch, and then I have another row of medallions, kind of like these ones, but a little bit smaller. And then this will be done. So I feel like I'm at like the 3/4 way point. However, this project has about 77,000 stitches in it, something like that. So 1/4 of 77,000 stitches is still a lot of stitches. So, you know, am I close to a finish? It depends on how you think of it. So yeah, this is definitely, my goodness, I'm out of breath. Just thinking about this behemoth of a project is taking my breath away. So yeah, I have a lot of work still to do on this, but I really want this done in 2025. I started this in the summer of 2023. Obviously, I wasn't working on it the whole time, but I do want to see the end of this. And also, can you imagine it on my wall? Imagine every floss tube. This is behind me. That's like one of the big motivators. I'm so tired of my boring beige wall. I'm really sorry that when you watch my videos, there's nothing to look at other than this face. That's why I always put my stuff on the couch behind me, so at least there's like something to look at. But anyways, one day when I win the lottery, I'm gonna get some of my stuff framed, and this is definitely one that I want framed. I will put on screen a mock-up of the entire thing so you can get an impression on you know, how much I truly have left. Anyways, so I am stitching this on 46 count light hazelnut by XJU Designs. I love this, and I did need to get a 1/2 yard, so I'm gonna have a ton of leftover, which is great because I really like this color and I feel like a lot of things look good on it. And the floss I'm using is 998 by NPI. Is it 998 or 993? I lied, it's 993. They have 2 blacks and I always get them mixed up. 998 is a little bit lighter. So I got the blacker of the 2 blacks. 993. There she is. How do I get it all in frame? Yeah, Oh my goodness, I'm so obsessed with looking at this. I need to finish it. It's gonna be so cool when it's done. Katie Strachan has this done, and I've seen a couple people on Instagram have it finished, and I just need to get it done. But I keep getting distracted by other things. I get overwhelmed if I have a lot of whips. I feel like 3 is kind of my maximum. Anyways, I'm at 2 right now. So this is my first one. My second one, let me show it to you. And this is a new whip, so you will not have seen this. However, I did show it kitted up in my kit parade. And this is, well, I'll get this out of the way. I think it's just called A Dutch Sampler by Kathy Barrick. And I think I'm about a quarter of the way through. It is quite a bit bigger than what I thought it was. Let me just get the cover model 1 second. So this is the mock-up of the model. The called for is, I believe, Havana by Weeks. That's the linen, and then NPI silks for the floss, except for the green. The green calls for a really fancy floss. Yeah, the green is willow green from the Thread Gatherer, and if you look at the mock-up here, anywhere where there is green, so if you look at like these leaves in this plant, that's actually all like one solid color, but it's a variegated floss. So, or actually compare these leaves to what I'm about to show you. So you see how that's really variegated? I am using the DMC conversion, so there is no variegation at all, which I don't love the green in this. And actually this is one of the first times that I've stitched something where I'm not enjoying myself as much. And I think it actually might be the reason why I am knitting so much, is because I'm kind of avoiding working on this, and I don't really want to start a new thing until this is done. My mom bought the pattern and the floss for me over a year ago. The linen I had in stash. The linen is Autumn Beach by Number 12 Stitch Co. in 40 count, by the way. But yeah, my mom bought everything for me so that I could stitch it for her. And doing my kit parade a few months ago was really useful because I got to see what I had sort of been neglecting. And I kind of don't want to leave any kits from 2023. I don't want to carry any kits from 2023 into 2026, if that makes sense. So everything that was in my kit parade from 2 years ago, I kind of would like to just get it all done. So yeah, it's not calling to me. And this is a very new feeling for me. I don't usually have this sort of resistance with a piece, and honestly I think it's because of the green. And also it's the motifs are a little different from what I'm used to stitching. I'm used to stitching things that are maybe a bit more sparse, whereas all of these motifs are really, really dense. They have a lot of stitches in it, and somehow this sampler is like twice as big as I thought it was. So it's a lot more stitching than I had in my mind. But I do think it's going to be really beautiful when it's done. It's such a cool sampler, like having a dark ground with all of this light stitching on top. Like that has got to be the faded colors. I'm quite confident that Kathy Barrick didn't choose the colors from the back of the antique. I suspect that the colors were very different. I mean, look at that flower in the middle. It's a very pale pink with a white. Same thing with this flower here. It's like kind of a grayish, very light pale tan and white. Like you can barely see the difference. And yeah, I'll show you the actual stitching. That might be more interesting. Like these flowers here and that flower there. It's just, the effect that it creates is really, really cool. But that has got to be based off of the faded antique. It's gotta be. I don't know. Anyways, I'm really looking forward to getting to the bright darker blue, which I've barely touched. I feel like that's really gonna bring this to life. So I'm almost there. I'm working on the big vase in the middle, and that has that really beautiful blue. So I'm looking forward to getting to that point, and I feel like once I finish that, I'll feel like I've hit like pretty much the halfway point. I'm hoping. Anyways, I'm struggling a little bit with this one. I know everyone says stitch what you love, it's fine to have a million whips, and it is fine, but I don't know. I feel like even having AKGIT, having started that in 2023 and being in 2025, like it bothers me that it's taking me that long to finish. So I don't know. I don't want to abandon it. I also know that I'm gonna feel so good once it's done and I get it to my mom, and also my mom will be happy. So there's other motivators going on too. So, okay, now, oh my God, I'm out of breath. Okay, so now we're gonna cut to me talking about the 8 pairs of socks and the 1 pair of mittens that I have knit in the past few months. Okay, so here I have 8 pairs of socks, 1 pair of mittens, and actually 2 sock whips. So let's kind of divide these up into different categories, and we can start with these 2 pairs that I don't want to talk about too much because they are going to be part of part 2 of my 52 weeks of socks series that will probably come out in like a year. But anyways, I will tell you what they are and what the yarn is. So this one here is pattern number 14 in 52 weeks of socks. It is the Lume sock by Heidi Allender, and the yarn that I chose is called Jingle Bell, and it is by Entre Sœurs et Laine, and this is a local dyer to me. I bought this at a Christmas market, which is like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. So I have a good memory associated with having bought this yarn. And yeah, it's has a couple of little lace details on there and on the cuff. So yeah, that's 1 pair. The next pair is, actually I'm quite proud of this because I used all leftover yarns for this. And this is the, I don't know if it's Mika or Micah, but anyways, it's Mika is what I was calling it. So the Mika sock by Christine Vehar, and it's a DK weight sock, and I used all leftovers, so I ended up swapping out the colors and the color work for my second sock. So this color is from the Knitting Loft, which is a shop in Toronto, and they have a house brand. So it's their sock yarn in the colorway Converse, which I held together with Drops Kid Silk in the color number 1. It doesn't really have a name, but it's just a white. And the pink color is leftover that I had from a Full Moon Fibers sock yarn in the color Cosmic Pink. And I held that together with Drops Kid Silk in the number 3, which is a pale pink. So that's that. This is the first time I've used mohair in a sock, so we will see if that was a good decision or not. But anyways, I'll move on from those. In my next little category, yeah, this is the Petal Drop sock by Florence Miller. And actually this, I kind of blame this pattern for having gone down the rabbit hole of sock knitting. I initially just wanted to knit vanilla socks, but in like funky yarns. And then a video tutorial to how to make this sock came up, recommended, and it just opened a whole new world of what knitting was. So after a year of knitting, I felt like it was finally time to knit these. So as I mentioned, Florence Miller is the designer. They're called the Petal Drop socks. The yarn is Tout le Matin. They have a sock yarn that has, again, some mohair in it. It also has nylon, but it has mohair in it. And the colorway is called Valentine. The one change I made to the pattern is that I did a picot edge for the cuff. I had just been curious about that kind of a cuff for a sock. I'd never done it before, so I looked up a tutorial and that's what I did. And I think it looks really nice with this pattern. I think she has you do a 1x1 twisted rib, but yeah, this works too. All right, the next pair of socks is the Season socks by the queen of sock design, Summer Lee. And I did adapt this. I'll talk about the yarn first because it's kind of relevant. So this is Shirley Bryan Yarns, which is a hand-dyed yarn out of Perth, Ontario. And this colorway is called Aslan. As you can see, I started from the opposite end of the ball for the second sock. And this pattern, I wanted to use the entire ball of yarn so that I could, take advantage of the entire fade. So I thought, okay, what if I do a slouchy sock and it'll be really comfy? And so the pattern has you use larger needles. So what I decided to do is that I made one size larger. In those larger needles, I knit the cuff and the leg, and then I switched to my regular 2.25 millimeter needles at the heel. And then the other change that I did is that when I did the gusset, I decreased to end up with, on the bottom of my foot, the amount of stitches that I would need had I actually knit my size, so that the sock would be smaller for the foot and no longer be slouchy. A lot of people in their project pages talked about how the row gauge is different in the stockinette than it is in the stitch pattern on the top of the foot. And so I compensated for that by knitting very, very tight on the bottom of the foot and very, very loose on the top of the foot. So it was just a little bit of a trick, and it worked. And especially after blocking, I don't have any issue with that. So it worked out really well for me. So just to reiterate, I started one size higher in the recommended needles. I went down needle size. I did extra decreases in the gusset so that I'd have less stitches on the bottom needle as if I had been knitting my proper size. And I knit with high tension on the bottom of the foot and low tension on the top of the foot. And then I rearranged stitches when I got to the toe so that I have an equal number of stitches on the bottom and the top, and I just followed the pattern. So I'm really happy with how those turned out, and I'm kind of proud of my little adjustments. They all worked out pretty well for me. And my goodness, what a beautiful yarn. These socks, I didn't actually use a pattern for this. I had this skein of yarn that I had bought at a shop in Toronto called Yarns Untangled, and the yarn is by Riverside Studio. It's their super sock base, which is actually an 8-ply, so it's supposed to be extra strong. And I am going to be going to Stitch North pretty soon, like in a month and a half or so, and I might go a day or two early and just like hang out with my sister who lives in Toronto. And I thought it would be really fun if I went back to Yarns Untangled and I wore these socks. So I don't know if that'll actually end up happening, but that was kind of the idea. And it's a highly variegated yarn. Oh, by the way, this color is called Kensington. Yarns Untangled is a shop in the Kensington Market in Toronto, and this is an exclusive colorway that they have with with Riverside Studio, that yarn dyer. So it's kind of a special skein in my eyes. And I didn't want to just do a vanilla sock, so what I ended up doing, and I doubt I'm the first to kind of come up with this. Well, I don't know if I really came up with it, but basically row 1, I knit. Row 2, I do knit 1, purl 1 to the end of the row. Row 3, I knit, and row 4, I do purl 1, knit 1. And what you end up happening is every second row kind of like sticks out. And so sometimes I have the blue that ends up being kind of dominant, and then sometimes the orange is kind of dominant, and I don't know, it was a way of highlighting this variegated yarn without just ending up with like micro stripes like you see down here, which would also be really pretty. Anyways, so I made that pair too, and I'm excited to maybe wear that in a month or two at Yarns Untangled. We'll see. All right, okay, now I'll talk about the pair of mittens that I made. These are the Alma mittens by Maja Ackerstrom. Not sure how to pronounce that. I'm probably saying it wrong. I'm very sorry. And for this, I used West Yorkshire Spinners, their sock yarn in the color 1007 Pacific. That's the blue. And I held it double and also with leftover Drops Kid Silk in the color 15. If you look, you'll see little specks of like this. It's actually very, very dark brown. And then the lighter color is Pro Lana Yarns Sokkenwolle Uni in the color 410 Tan. And I again held that double along with mohair, again leftover Drops Kid Silk in the color 54, which is very, very pale tan. So they're fluffy mittens. And I have the same issue with these that I've had with the other pair of mittens that I made, is that they are kind of small. They're like not quite long enough, and they're tight around my thumb. I have very big hands, especially my left hand is very, very big. I think it's because I'm a cellist and I've been stretching out my hands for my whole life. But anyways, It could be my tension. It could be because I'm doing a magic loop. But yeah, I need my mittens to be a little bit longer, and I need a little bit more space around the thumb. So anyways, this is gonna go in my pile of potential gifts for somebody down the road because they're just not that comfortable on me. However, they are beautiful, and because I held the yarn triple, they're super, super warm. So whoever ends up with these is very lucky. The last 3 pairs of finished socks are kind of all the same, so I will just show them all. Recently, I came across a tutorial for a different kind of heel, and it was conceptualized by Isolde Teague, and if that name sounds familiar, well, she is the designer behind the very, very popular muscle bra hat, which I have myself knit 4 times, and I'm sure I will knit again. She calls it a deep shadow heel, and I will link her video tutorial in the description. It's a genius heel. So I have not like a super high instep, but I have found that short row heels don't always really work that great for me. And I have been quite partial to heel flap and gusset designs. But I came across this tutorial and I was very, very intrigued. So it's basically a shadow wrap heel. Like the first half of the heel is a shadow wrap heel. But then when you do the second half, you work those stitches in such a way that you end up making an increase on each of the like double worked stitches. I don't really know how to explain it. You're just gonna have to watch the video. Anyway, so you end up with many more stitches so that you can make a little gusset. However, you don't end up with the same amount of extra stitches as you would with a heel flap and gusset. So I compensated by doing decreases every 3rd round instead of every 2nd round. And this is the best fitting sock that I have ever made. Well, actually not this particular one because I was too excited to finish. So I probably needed to knit the foot a little bit longer. I just really wanted it done. Actually, the first sock was the first time I knit a sock in a day. Like I cast it on in the morning and I was done by the time the day was over. All I did that day was knit the sock. So maybe not the best use of my time, but anyways, I ended up with a sock that I really love. Could have been a little bit longer on the leg, but that's totally my fault. And then the following 2 pairs of socks, I did the exact same thing, but I added an extra inch of length on the leg and an extra like 2 or 3 rounds on the foot. So now I'll talk about the yarn. So remember these socks, I use leftover yarns from this pair and this pair to make this pair. This first pair here, the main color is Cosmic Pink by Full Moon Fibers, and the contrast is Verdant, also by Full Moon Fibers. This one here, this was a Valentine's Day colorway, so the main color is called Love Letter, and the contrast color is called Pink Experience, and these are both also by Full Moon Fibers. So I'm becoming a big fan of that yarn dyer quite quickly. And then for this last pair, I used yarn from the Knitting Loft, their house brand. I'm not sure if their house brand is just called Knitting Loft, but anyways, it's their sock yarn. And this is, I wonder if it's actually the same sock base as this one, because it's also an 8-ply and it feels pretty much identical in my fingers. So I wonder if they use the same base. But anyways, it's also an 8-ply, so I imagine it would be pretty hard wearing. And the contrast color is Flash by Biscotte Yarn in their Bissoc base. So it's a very soft yarn. And I wanted these to kind of look like a tennis ball. I don't know if I succeeded, but I wanted, I don't know, I just have wanted a few pairs of vanilla socks because I find that I don't really wear my fancy socks that much because, you know, you put all this effort into it and socks get worn out. So one of my sock knitting goals for 2025 is to make more vanilla or vanilla adjacent socks. So now I have these 3 pairs. I've shown them online, so I don't have to keep them perfect anymore, and I can start wearing them. I have 2 sock whips. This first one is the next pattern in 52 Weeks of Socks. It is a lace pattern. The pattern is called Toivo Harju, and it is by Heidi Allender, so actually the same designer as the Lumet socks. And the yarn I'm using is the Mohair Sock by Emily C. I don't know if it's Gillies or Jillies, and the color is called Cat's Eye. And this yarn is interesting because there's actually no nylon in it. The thing that's supposed to make it strong is the mohair. I'm a little bit scared, but we will see. And I think I can probably, well, I would say that I could probably finish it today, but I'm going to be editing this video, so I might not actually have the time to finish it today. But yeah, the lace wraps around in the opposite direction on the second sock, so I think these are going to be just beautiful. And the last whip that I have, and I actually have it in my project bag here, is a sock that I'm knitting with my friend Michelle, the Knotted Owl, on Instagram, and it is another lace sock, and it has this cute ruffle, and the pattern is called Wood Nymph. This is a pattern by This Handmade Life. It is actually a free pattern, and again, this will have a left and a right sock because I'm going to do the lace on the opposite side on the second sock. The ruffle is not actually part of the pattern. We just decided to do that. And yeah, this has been a very simple sock to work on, so I've been working on it mostly at work because I feel like I would make mistakes if I worked on this one at work. But yeah, I'm having fun doing this. And the yarn is Issayur sock in the color 40. This was a 100-gram ball, and I've recently learned that this has actually been discontinued. They only sell them in 50-gram balls now. But anyways, I got this at a clearance price because they're discontinuing the 100-gram balls. But there you have it. These are all the socks that I've made recently and that I'm currently working on, plus this pair of mittens. All right, back to the regular video. So the last segment to this Flosstube episode is going to be all about 1897 Schoolhouse samplers. So if you've been following my Flosstube, you may remember that Evertote asked me to stitch a model of Sarah Allden, Prudence, Love, and Toil for their shop, which is a design by Leanne of, well, it's a reproduction that has been reproduced by Leanne of 1897 Schoolhouse samplers. And they actually just got it back from the framer, and I believe they said they're going to be bringing it to Stitch North. And I'm going to Stitch North, so I'm so excited to see it framed. I've never seen anything I've stitched framed before, so that's going to be really special. But anyways, Leanne and I have been in touch, and she has asked me to stitch some models for her. So that's like such a big honor for me. So I can't actually show you these patterns because they don't, other than the actual charts, like she's charted them out, but there's not like a mock-up of them. So I can't show them to you without showing you the actual pattern. So obviously I can't do that, but I can show you the materials that she sent me. So she has sent me 2 patterns for 2 different samplers to model stitch for her. However, one of them, she sent me 2 different linen and floss combinations. So the first one is Lammegien Pot, I think it's a towel? Show towel by Lammegien Pot. And the first option that she wants me to stitch is on 35 count watermelon by Weeks Dye Works, which is this striking color, and with Weeks Dye Works Arrowhead as the floss. So she had asked me to use my best judgment to make sure that there was fairly good coverage. So since this is 35 count and it's a, you know, off-white on a darker linen, I might actually stitch with 2 threads, which is not something that I normally do, but I think it could be good practice. I haven't done it in a while, so I actually might have to like do that, whatever, railroad tracks or whatever, where you make sure that all of the stitches sit down nice. Anyways, we'll see. So that's the first combination, and for the same project, I got a second kit, and it's kind of the colors but inverted. So the linen here is Old Sheep by XJU Designs in 40 count, and actually this color, I mean, she gave me just a big enough piece to stitch this, and then I'm gonna have to send it back to her. So I don't get to keep it, but I'm glad I'm getting to see it in real life because this, I feel like everything would look good on this. Yeah, Old Sheep by XJU Designs in 40 count. And then the floss is Antique Rose by The Gentle Art. So it's kind of the inversion of the first kit. So that's gonna be so pretty. I love this color. Like I can imagine something that was very red fading over time. I'm gonna guess that the original antique looks a little bit more like this. I'd be pretty surprised if it looked like this. I don't know though, I haven't seen the antique. So that is the second kit that she passed along to me. And she also, everything was in a little bag like this, and it was packed so well. I was so worried about like using scissors to open up the package because like my worst fear is accidentally cutting into the linen. So I didn't use scissors, but in the end I probably could have. It was like in a bubble wrap with another bubble wrap, and anyway, it was very well packed. And the second design, which is actually the third kit, is Anna Maria Smith Hemel Hempstead. Oh no, I think Hemel Hempstead is maybe the location. What is this girl? Anna Maria Smith. I think her name is Anna Maria Smith. And maybe Hemel Hempstead is the location. I'm not totally sure. Anyways, she gave me a whole hank of antique wedding dress and pub crawl, 46 count pub crawl by Roxy Floss. And I have used this floss. Actually, I believe it is the white that I used in Lammegien Pot. But the linen I have not used. And this is, I mean, I think this was specially dyed for the, was it Peacock, Badger, Unicorn, the peas, whatever it's called, the peacorn. By the way, peacorn, okay, this is a side note. There is a sampler that a lot of people have stitched, and it has been affectionately named the peacorn, just as a joke, because I think Caroline said peacorn in a Flosstube once. So sometimes people will use that hashtag peacorn to refer to this. However, if you check out that hashtag on Instagram, it is the most hilarious combination of people stitching that sampler and people's like Thanksgiving dinners. Anyway, in case you want to have a little giggle one day, just check out hashtag peacorn. Anyways, so this linen was especially conceived for that sampler, but now it's going to be used for this one too. So I think my plan of action with these three models is to start with the 2/2, just because I think that will be probably the most challenging for me since it's what I'm least used to. And then just to break things up and not have to stitch the same sampler twice in a row, I will then do the Anna Maria Smith one, and then I'll go and do the original Maria Cane Ports for a second time. And then I will send it all to Leanne. Okay, so that's very exciting. I think I'm gonna start one of those tonight, which means that I will have 3 whips. But I feel like model stitching whips don't count because they're in a separate category. So it's kind of funny that all of the model stitching that I will have done has been for 1897 Schoolhouse samplers. And, you know, model stitching is amazing and it helps you to, you know, connect with the industry as a stitcher. However, the one very sad thing about it is that you stitch these beautiful pieces and then you have to give them away. So, you know, it is part of the job that I have, you know, embraced, but it is a little bit sad. And I am really excited about Leanne's design. So I thought, just for me and my own, you know, satisfaction of being able to keep one of these pieces, I decided to kit up this piece by Leanne. Okay, let me just get it ready to show. So I purchased a Tender Father 1847 by, again, 1897 Schoolhouse samplers. I think this is one of her older designs, but it's very, very beautiful. And I got it sort of kitted up from Evertote with all of the called for Roxy Floss. The nice thing about having some stash now is that I actually only needed to buy a couple of the flosses because I already had almost everything in stash. So this is Biscuit. It might actually be the offcut from my Lammegien Pot. Biscuit, and then all of the flosses are here. they're not very beautifully arranged, but these are these are the flosses. And yeah, so at some point I would love to stitch this and then actually get to keep it just for me. And I just realized that on the back it gives you a picture of the antique. So that thing looks like it smells gross. Sorry. I'm sure it smells a little dusty, but you know, it is to be expected. Who knows how many basements and attics this has been sitting in over the past 150 years. Anyways, but my version is gonna look a little bit more like this. So I'm looking forward to whenever I get the chance to do that. So I actually have another sampler. Oh, the name escapes me right now, but I will have it on screen as well as the name of it. And when I go to Stitch North in like a month and a half, I am starting it there. I don't care what anybody says, I'm starting it there. It's super cool because it's been charted. I mean, I think you can get it so that I think you can get a kit so that it looks more like the antique, but there's also an option where it's on this like bright purple linen, and I just think it's so cool. Anyway, so it's another 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers design, and a couple of people are gonna start it with me on, I think, what is it, May 3rd or May 2nd, the first day of Stitch North. Anyways, there are a few people who are not going to Stitch North who are also going to start it on the same day. So maybe we can do like a little stitch along for the sampler. And I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But it'll be on screen. So anybody who's going to weekend 2 of Stitch North, and even if you're not going, but you just like this sampler and wants to stitch it with me, let's all start it. It's super cool. Anyways, okay, so I think that's everything. Sorry it was so long since my last video. You know, life happens. There was too much storage taken up on my phone from all of my sock videos, but now there's tons of storage, and hopefully no one else in my family dies. So hopefully I can, you know, make another video in less than 4 months from now. But anyways, until the next time, I hope you have a great time stitching or knitting or whatever you're doing. I hope everybody in your life is doing well. I hope everybody's healthy. I have a lot of people in my life who are going through hard times right now for various reasons. I don't know what's going on, but anyways, I just want to send everybody big hugs and enjoy your crafting. So yeah, I will see you, well, I'll see you in a few days with the socks videos. But if you don't watch those, I'll see you in whatever the next one ends up being. Okay, bye-bye.